If y'all are new to my channel, you will know that I have talked about people who commit welfare fraud or multiple types of fraud on my channel, and how it's a certain group of people that actually usurp those who they try to call welfare kings and queens. Now, we all know the most famous one right now is Brett Favre. Now, of course, you know that's a person I've been talking about for the last month or so, but the reason why I haven't done any videos as of late because about him is because there really hasn't been anything new to report on him. And trust, I be checking like every day just to see if anything new comes up, but nothing new has been reported except them doing a recycling of the events we've already covered. So of course I'm staying on top of that, and if you didn't know, there's a whole playlist behind that. So if you want to see the whole Brett Favre welfare king saga, you can go and check that playlist out. But there's also another group of people in particular that I've talked about on my channel before, and if y'all are new, you may not be aware of that, but for those who've been subscribed to me since my original channel, and of course the growth of this one over time, know that I have said that there's a certain group of people in the US, particularly in the tri-state area between the states of Jersey and New York, and to be more specific, but especially in New York, which we're going to talk about today, where you have people who have committed an immense amount of fraud in the establishment. And I'm talking about they commit so much fraud that it will make what they claim black people do when it comes to welfare look like a walk in the park. And then if you call this out, they'll try to give you these labels. And as a matter of fact, when I'm done reading this article, I'm going to show you a tweet under this post from the New York Times that someone put on there to try to deflect away from what we obviously see. Now, I wish I could read the article itself coming from the New York Times, but unfortunately, they put that article behind a paywall. That's the one thing about the New York Times and the Washington Post that I don't like, is that they'll put some articles behind a paywall and some of them you can get for free. But I guess they figured since this is a juicy enough story, they said, oh, we're going to make you pay for that one. But that's fine, because I found a workaround. I just typed in certain keywords and the article came up on Yahoo. Now, the one thing I wish is that I don't know how in depth Yahoo was going to go with this, because I know the New York Times probably will go more into it because it's coming directly from the New York Times, but I might luck up. So we're going to see what happens. So you see it right here on your screen. This is actually the tweet from the New York Times Twitter page, and one of my followers on Twitter tagged me in this post. And then I went on to Twitter and got a notification, and someone tagged me in there in the comment section of one of my videos, like literally almost about 2 minutes apart. So they really want me to speak on this, and that's fine, because here we are. So you see it right here. Breaking news: the largest private Hasidic Jewish school in New York admitted to stealing millions of dollars from the government in a years-long fraud. Years, not year long as in 1 year, but years as in more than 1 year. And I'm telling y'all right now, this, which you are hearing from the sound of my voice over the next couple of minutes, should not even remotely shock nor surprise you. If you've been following my videos, when I actually do talk about this, which is kind of few and far between, this is nothing new. It's nothing new at all. When you look up who commits some of the biggest welfare fraud or the biggest fraud, it's people who look like them and people within this community. But you're not supposed to point that out. But enough of me giving this little intro. Let me go ahead and see what they're talking about here, because I'm curious to see how much money they took and for how long this has been going on. For years, the largest private Hasidic Jewish school in New York State illegally diverted millions of dollars from a variety of government programs, paid teachers off the books, and requested reimbursement for meals for students that it never actually provided, the yeshivas operators admitted in federal court Monday. As part of the widespread fraud, school officials took money intended to feed children and used it to subsidize parties for adults, federal prosecutor said. Now you got to question yourself. How is this any different than what Brett Favre did? It's really no different. The only difference between Brett Favre is them is they operated as a group to do this. And I know I spoke too soon, not realizing I got so wrapped into my little intro that it says right here that they had to pay $8 million after admitting to federal fraud, but that's just how much they got to pay back. That's not really specifying how much they took. Because remember, Brett Favre took a whole bunch of money and he only has to pay some of it back. He still hasn't paid back that interest, which was way less than what he took. In order to avoid facing criminal charges, the school, the Central United Talmudical Academy in the Williamsburg neighborhood of Brooklyn, agreed to pay fines and restitution totaling more than $8 million, according to a deferred prosecution agreement filed Monday in U.S. District Court in Brooklyn. Today's admission makes clear there was a pervasive culture of fraud and greed in place at CUTA, said Michael J. Driscoll, assistant director in charge of the FBI New York's office, referring to the school by its initials in a statement. Now, before I go any further, a key word they mentioned there in this sentence was greed. This is a word that they try to frown upon when it comes to that community. They hate being called out for their level of greed. They hate it. And you want to know what's so crazy? I didn't even want to bring this person's name up right here, but this right here probably came out at a bad time for them because of everything that's going on with Kanye West. But I'm going to save that point for the tweet that I was talking about that's connected to this article. It's not connected so much to the article, but it's a tweet that somebody made. And you'll see what I mean when I get there. We expect schools to be places where students are taught how to do things properly. The leaders of CUTA went out of their way to do the opposite. In court Monday, a lawyer representing the yeshiva, Mark Mukasey, said school leaders would work collaboratively with the government to fulfill its obligations under the agreement, which has been in the works since 2019. After the hearing, Mukasey declined to comment further. School leaders did not respond to phone and email messages seeking comment. The filing came 6 weeks after a New York Times investigation revealed that about 100 all-boys Hasidic schools across the state had received more than $1 billion in taxpayer funding in recent years, while most were denying their students a basic secular education. Now you got to think $1 billion to 100 boys. Now, really think about that. That's a lot of money that's split between 100 people. The Central United Talmudical Academy figured prominently in that article. Since then, Hasidic schools have come under intensifying government pressure on multiple fronts, with officials scrutinizing what the schools teach and how they manage their finances. In September, the State Board of Regents approved a set of rules requiring all private schools, including yeshivas, to prove they are teaching non-religious subjects such as English and math or face a loss of funding. The state education commissioner ruled that this month that one Brooklyn boys yeshiva that had been the subject of a lawsuit was not complying with the state law requiring all private schools to provide a basic secular education. That school will have to work with the New York City Education Department to improve. As part of the agreement filed in court Monday, the Central United Talmudical Academy will be subject to an independent monitor for the next 3 years, after which prosecutors will dismiss the charges. Wow, such a punishment, right? The school will be able to submit a list of potential monitors for the government to approve. The school has more than 2,000 male students enrolled at one location and 2,500 female students at separate buildings nearby. It is the flagship organization of a powerful faction of the Satmar group of Hasidic Judaism run by Grand Rabbi Aaron Teitelbaum. I'm guessing that's how you pronounce his name. I'm not entirely sure. The faction operates several other schools in Brooklyn and the lower Hudson Valley. The Williamsburg school received about $10 million in government funding in the year before the pandemic, according to a Times analysis of city, state, and federal funding records. During a hearing Monday, U.S. District Judge Nicholas G. Garofis said he was deeply concerned about the behavior the yeshiva admitted to engaging in. It is my hope that this is a new beginning, he added. Here's the thing, this is not new. And for some of them to act like this is so shocking is baffling to me. But again, they have to remain on code. and they have to pretend like they didn't know that this was happening. It may not have been happening with them, but it's been happening amongst them in other factions amongst the city and throughout the tri-state area or wherever it is that they dwell. Garofis employed 2 school representatives, Cheskel Berkowitz and Yoel Wise, to follow through on the promises the school had made to eliminate any financial impropriety for the good of the community. The federal investigation into the school, led by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of New York, stemmed from a criminal case against 2 of its former leaders, Eliezer Porges and Joel Lowy. Both men pled guilty in March 2018 for their roles in a conspiracy to defraud the government through school nutrition programs. During that case, the investigators found evidence of other fraud and broadened the scope of their inquiry, federal authorities said. The documents filed Monday revealed that the school was at the center of a varied and wide-ranging fraud scheme. For years, the documents showed the school paid many of its teachers and other employees in part with cash, coupons, and life insurance policies, making it seem as if the employees were earning less than they really were and allowing them to pay lower taxes and qualify for welfare. From 2010 to 2015, the school paid employees with at least $12 million in coupons, 17% of its total employee compensation, which the workers could use as cash in Hasidic grocery stores and other shops, the investigators found. The school also set up no-show jobs for friends and employees and other community members, the document said. The yeshiva also benefited from its fraudulent payment practices because many employees and other community members used their welfare status to receive New York City vouchers for child care and then used them to pay the school, according to the document. The Times reported last month that a city voucher program sent nearly 1/3 of its total funding to Hasidic neighborhoods last year. The federal investigation found that the school defrauded government programs meant to provide meals to low-income children, receiving more than $3.2 million from 2014 to 2016 in reimbursement for what authorities said was an almost entirely fictitious meal program. And they say low income, I can pretty much guarantee what demographic they're talking about mainly. The fraud included the fabrication of records and dozens of sworn misrepresentations to government agencies, authorities noted. In some cases, the court documents said yeshiva officials claimed that they provided meals to children on days when the school was not in session. In recent years, as the school has negotiated with the prosecutors, it has replaced its executive management team and developed a new set of controls, among other changes, authorities said. Today's resolution accounts for CUTA's involvement in those crimes and provide a path forward to repay and repair the damage done to the community, while also allowing CUTA to continue to provide education for children in the community, said Breon Peace, the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of New York, in a statement. The Times investigation found that the Central United Talmudical Academy, like other Hasidic schools, focus almost exclusively on providing religious education with little instruction in English, reading and math, and almost no classes in history, science, or civics. The Times also reported that Hasidic boys' schools tend to score much lower on state standardized exams than other schools in New York. Gee, I wonder why. That's because whatever's on that standardized test is not what they're teaching them in these schools. And that's another little tidbit right there that I didn't know that they revealed us about them standardized testing and how they significantly score lower than other schools across the state. Not just in the city, but across the entire state of New York. In 2019, the Central United Talmudical Academy agreed to give state standardized tests in reading and math to more than 1,000 students, the Times found. Every one of them failed. Wow. Just gets more interesting and interesting. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this right quick and retrieve that tweet that I wanted y'all to see. Now, peep this right here. It's coming from this person named Max Bassant. Listen, I don't know who that is, but I just was scrolling through the thread to see what people was responding to in the tweet. And look at what he said. As a Jewish person, we have known and blown the whistle on abuses within the Hasidic community for years. We're timing for the Times to be doing an investigation on this right now, suddenly in the midst of rising anti-Semitism. And we know he's talking about, is this boosting your click-through rate? And then he puts the raising eyebrow emoji. I find it very interesting that this guy and I'm only focusing on him because his tweet, I think, gained most of the traction when he wrote this. And I guess he thought he was doing something because the people in the following comments, they pretty much went in on him for even uttering these words. He says that it's weird timing for them to do an investigation now. Why is it weird timing? If anything, this is going to blow something sky high, or blow something open where they can hopefully continue to investigate something like this going on. And this is not the first time that they've talked about this. See, the thing is, because of the, in his words, the quote unquote rise of anti-Semitism, this should not have been a topic of discussion. In other words, this should have stayed under wraps, like most of their other fraudulent cases have been over the years. You think that this is the only one that they talk about? Probably yes for right now, but there are several others out there that they don't touch on, because these stories happen few and far in between. Now, I got a question for this Max guy. I wonder, would he have said the same thing if this came out in the midst of everything going on with Brett Favre down there in Mississippi? Would he have said the same thing? I'm just curious. Because the way he framed it, like I said, it was a deflection thing. He said it's weird timing for the Times to be doing an investigation on this right now. Suddenly, in the midst of rising anti-Semitism. Why not? Because I'm sure that if this was involving black people, this Max guy would not have anything to say. And I'm going to read to you what his bio says, because I see it right there on the left. On the right. It says, beard, gay glasses, Jewish editor, Pisces lefty. I kid you not. That's what his bio says. There you go. But this also goes back to the thing of how people who are not part of that community are not supposed to talk about the stuff that they do. Something like this was not supposed to come out. And my thing to this Max guy again is say that there wasn't a quote unquote rise in anti-Semitism as you claim. If this had came out regardless, would you still have said the same thing? Like, what kind of response would you have been able to give? Again, like I said, we are not supposed to criticize or critique them. And in his eyes, how dare a publishing company such as the New York Times dare have the gall to report this, even though this is a growing problem and has been for quite some time. Like I said, what I just read to you from the New York Times about this is nothing new. I've done videos on this kind of topic in the past, but it constantly gets looked over. And see, the thing is, when they get exposed for doing stuff like this and they have concrete proof of them doing it, they have the resources to make this go away, quote unquote. I'm telling you right now, many of you listening to the sound of my voice with this video, this might be the first time you have ever heard this. And some of you live in the state of New York. But I'm sure many people who live in New York have many stories to tell that don't make it to the lamestream media circuit. I'm almost looking to see what y'all gonna say in the comments for those of you who live in New York. And you don't even have to live in New York. You can live in other areas where you know that this is happening. But again, this is the community that, you know, claims that they're under something that makes them almost kind of, I guess you can say, puts them into a state of victimhood. I was watching a premiere video on Just Talking with TD and Rob, and shout out to them. And TD had made a good point, especially when it comes to this community. They have a lot of resources. They have a lot of power collectively. But then will be or try to insert or try to fix themselves with all those resources and powers that they have into a victim category that could be reserved for people that don't even have a third of what they have. Like, how are you going to be in power, have all these resources, and then fall into the quote unquote oppressed category at the same time and be a victim? Like that, how does that work? How does that work? It's really confusing to me. And that's exactly what this Max Bassance guy did in this tweet. How dare you call out wrongdoing in my community? How dare you call out the criminality, of what's going on in my community? That's the point. They aren't supposed to. We aren't supposed to point it out either, especially us. And that's exactly what he did in this tweet. And a lot of people went in on him about that too. This is no different than when you have people say or critique the people in the academy, and when you do, they'll say, oh, you're being homophobic, or you're being transphobic, or you're being biphobic. It's the same thing when they say this, or you're anti-Semitic for calling out a particular group of people in your community that's literally been defrauding the state of millions of dollars for years. Make it make sense.